I hope you enjoyed the discussions in the morning. I personally, I enjoyed it very much. First of all, I would like to greet Yad Nadiv for continuing the process. It started 4 years ago, and we are commemorating the 3rd seminar. And I hope that this will continue, because it's important, very important for architecture, for Jerusalem and for Israel. And I wish you a great success in that. I would like to greet the guests for bringing their work, their wisdom to us. Generally, we are looking out. Now we are staying here. It's very important. And I would like finally to greet our colleagues that are from all corners of this country. And from the number of people I see, it's not a small country. It's a big country. And to gather in Jerusalem, I think it's a very, very important thing. And I wish, as I said for Yad Nadiv, I wish that we could gather for many, many years to come. And now, I'm about introducing our guest, Enric Miralles. Enric Miralles was born in 1955, and he had his architectural title in 1978. He's very young, with a big and a very rich curriculum. Very rich curriculum. For this, I think that he achieved many, many things at this age. We are commemorating this seminar on the theme of technology, place, and architecture. And I think that Enric Miralles is fitting exactly inside this theme. Exactly. If you take word by word, architecture, technology, place, Enric Miralles is fitting that. At the beginning, when I was looking at his work and studying his work, I had a feeling of an abstract sculptural creation. As the Takaoka train station. But immediately, I understood that a space was created, that a place was created by a structure of our time. There are many, many ways that architecture can be expressed. Miralles has his own way, his particular way as expressing himself. And I would like to quote one of his writings in a book that I read about him. And I quote, "I have made splashes in ink, like an erratic form of writing, to trace the course of the competition entry for the harbor in Bremerhaven. Continuing, from this viewpoint, it does not seem strange that the drawings, our usual tools for communication while we are thinking about a project, appear at the end of the process and not at the beginning. It is really not important if the process begins at the end of the or at the beginning. It's really not important. What is important is the final result and achievement. Miralles is doing good architecture. I would like to say to you that today I was at the discussion in the morning, and I would actually, if I would be obliged to write about Miralles after this discussion, I would change this introduction. But I think I would take a long time to explain myself. Then it's better to stay as I am. And Miralles is doing very good architecture based in the heritage of the Catalan culture and creativity. And it's not a very easy thing to have a background as Casals, as Picasso, as Miro and Gaudi, that I'm sure that they had a certain influence in Miralles. Enric Miralles told me that that recently he visited the favelas, the slums in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in order to try to improve their standard of living. I hope that in his planning he will find some good solutions. It is very important, in my opinion, that in our era of technology, a little bit of humanism shall be introduced in our profession. Ladies and gentlemen, Enric Miralles, bienvenido a Jerusalén.
So, many thanks also for the beautiful introduction. I think he could follow with the slides. I think it will be, no, really, will be very good, because my image of that this seminar, it was completely different of what really happens. The word seminar, I don't know why, talks me about a small room, say 20 people, and so I'm very impressed and happy to be in this place. But in a way, the material I was bringing was much more this kind of one-to-one. But at the end, I think also Renzo yesterday told me that will be okay, because at the end, this one-to-one communication is probably the only one the architects we have in between ourselves. No, I think what is surprising in my formation, that by the specific circumstances of the Spain change of regime, etc., my generation was allowed to go fast into the reality of the profession. It was this fantastic sense of communication through the work. I mean, you should imagine that also today I'm going to show most early work also, because we agreed that with Ken, but you should imagine the surprise that somebody understands what you do. I think this is quite a surprise. So then in a way, most of the effort of my work, I could say, it's been to be able to follow that communication. So, and then when Kenneth Frampton proposed me to come here, which I really said yes from the beginning, and I'm really interested, he put me this thing, technology, place, and architecture. And in a way, I took it like a quiz, no? It's, I mean, what is yellow inside and white outside, or one of these kind of things, no? That then you give it as a quiz, no? Because in a way, the three words or the three ideas, let's say, are so much part of the architecture that you could not escape or evade. So I took it as a quiz, no? And then as a quiz, I found the answer. So I give the answer, and then we will go into the slides. Because the answer is, and I found it very precisely, and I think in a similar way that I try to work in my professional work, let's say. Also he suggests me to try a bit to make a kind of a scenification of this kind of debate in between the earth and the roof, let's say, no? And I will suggest, in relation to the fantastic lecture we heard yesterday by Jean Nouvel, that he's proposing you, I think, to see your projects like this, no? In this fantastic, deep idea of the immaterial, no? Like this, no? I'm proposing you to see these slides like this, no? And I think it's going to be a good mixture. And probably the next lecturers will make a good cocktail, I hope. So, because I think in this kind of confused way, you keep this idea, and the first idea I had about the lecture will be to take from my projects, in a way, this effort from raising from the floor, no? I mean, this effort of, let's say, for me the most difficult thing of a project is, let's say, getting out of the foundations. I mean, I think I'm quite good on foundations, but then, let's say, the first 20 centimeters is always a tragedy, no? But, and I thought that in a way, that effort could be well summarized by a concept which is, I think, also very elemental as every time, which is almost the labyrinth, no? This kind of quality that you are engaged very much with a specific situation, technology, place, whatever, but that you are engaged with the margins, you touch, you want to make as many contacts as possible with the, most of the time, not ideal reality that is being given to us. And then out of that, you are able, in a way, almost, I'm talking almost very direct. It's not a metaphor, it's a graphic image. You are able to make a labyrinth out of that, in a way, from that gets enough energy to raise above, no? And so I took that very precisely, and I'm going to describe that in some projects. And I'm happy he quoted this Bremenhaven project and that demonstrates that architecture is scientific, because it's the first project I'm going to show, and I never show it in lectures, so I think it was very precise. And I'm starting Bremenhaven, then I will do a bit the moving in Unasuki, then we will spend a bit of time on the cemetery, then we will go on to precisely on the retaining wall of archery, and then from there into the surface of the archery competition, from that surface, which is earth, into the outside of the sport hall in Huesca, and from there maybe into the ramps of racing Alicante, no? And then some examples. So in a way, again, as always, I try to make one of these connection phrases, no? And the solution to the enigma given by Kenneth Frampton, I think it's a fantastic text, very short, more than text, a method or an image given by Jean Arp. You know the sculpture, no? The Jean Arp, okay? So I think, and it's very beautiful because it's very much the problem I'm having in a project I'm doing now. And he said something which I think it makes a lot of sense, just if you have an architectonic problem in your mind. If not, it's just, I think, it was beautiful poetry, but I think it also quite be useful. It says, these sculptures that they want to, in a way, to pull down a cloud which is in the sky just by throwing arrows, they made a mistake, because they will ruin and waste a lot of arrows. It's useless to throw arrows into a cloud. No? And then they say, but I'm sure that there is a lot of very strange hunters that want to do this thing. No? I mean, I think you should have the image very clear, no? Which is what is about you, and then the arrows trying to bring this thing back. No? And then he says, but I could tell you how to do it. And also it's nice to have in mind Jean Arp work. No? The first thing you should do is to charm or to seduce the cloud just by playing the violin on sitting on a drum, or playing the drum sitting on a violin. But the thing that will happen is that the very, very fast, the cloud, you will see how the cloud starts going down, and this going down, you will see how it takes pleasure of that, and doing that, it will arrive to the earth, and itself, it will place in its more comfortable manner. So then you will have it there, and then you could do a good sculpture. No, I think it's, for me, a very precise way in which this kind of transformation of the thing from one nature to the other, it should come from the same capacity of metamorphosis of the same nature of the material. No? Bueno, but I think we could start with the slides. That I think is the equivalent to the image I've been showing to you, and I think it's probably one of the images I like most and represents a lot of my work, which is even one of these horizontal surfaces trying to, in a bit in an uncomfortable position, but trying to discover, almost thinking that discovery and invention has an equal quality, no? And probably, also I agree with what yesterday Jean-Nouvel talked about, the importance of time, and probably in one of the discussions will be nice to put this kind of, that really time is one of the qualities of place, or let's say of time probably is the place of architecture, much more than a specific site. No? But I think he explained that better than me. But I think in that sense, I have always this kind of fiction of the tracing, or almost the archaeological capacity of any given task. No? And that was the case of one of these, I'm starting by Bremenhaven, that was the case of this project, which in a way was, as most of these commissions nowadays, try to reestablish city conditions into a harbor which has no any more use, and establish, in a way, a kind of different strategy to approach the project, but probably the most elemental one, you could see it here, which was, in a way, on the meandering of the river going into the delta before the sea. You see, I mean, how many mistakes about cutting, etc., had been done, and then the first way of working was that, almost telling them that the same nature which is there, which is the trees, not the trees, but the cars and these things, in a way could be almost reshaped and reorganized. And for me it was quite impressive to think that this effort that can be done now, very contemporary and with different content, suddenly becomes from this very old tradition of Labyrinth, you know, in which, and then I was thinking that almost rearranging the earth at that moment was giving me the sense of time to start again the project in Bremenhaven. So in a way, an action like this could allow you to start rethinking with the same, this is not the form, let's say, this is the strategy to approach the site to start a dialogue with the existing. So, because sometimes the dialogue could not be started just by reading or just by making an interpretation. You need this kind of very, very active actions. No? And then out of that, in a way, I start developing the other proposals of the project, which I'm not going to explain. No? Just, in a way, was the movement I'm going to talk all day today is just about twisting, turning, fixing, no? Because suddenly the twisting has this movement that goes up and down, which in a way, even it's able to define the landscape, or at the same time is able to define the functioning of the cars or the scale of intervention, and giving a big compromise to the land, to any intervention. So in a way, whoever wants to put a bar, a small shop, or whatever, he should fight with that. No? And I understand also interventions in public space as a kind of fight. In a way, these people now, they should be able to dialogue in between this and this big shopping mall as a kind of something that should finally find an equilibrium. No? And then my proposal of working was even taking bits of that always as a kind of way of moving, and by this twisting or by this compression, you seem to in a way to fix the reality. You know? And here was one proposal about, I don't know, a piece of parking garage with the land, fixing some of the boat museums, starting some connections with the old mall, changing that into a commercial street, and then in a way, I offer this as a kind of a tool to dialogue with the city and the client. No? It's a dialogue we started 2 years ago, and we keep going with letters and things like that. So I hope sometime we'll get something. But in the context of today, I like it much more just to stress this repeated act that you will see in most of the slides. This is the competition for the concert hall in Copenhagen, near of the harbor, and again you see the proposal was try to fix the position of the boat, the connection with the bridge, the forced twisting of the building to face the old city, because I think here is Charlottenburg, etc. So I think, and then in a way, this twisting allows to start the dialogue in between different scales, the existing row of houses, the offices system, the public halls, the same atelier, no? In a way, as something that you could start almost by repeating the same act, start creating this kind of topographical quality. You know, it was a building that was thought to be mainly in wood, which I was very fond of it. But again, this is a dialogue with the city of Copenhagen that we keep following, and that was one of the competitions. No? And then probably this is clearly almost programmatically built on the pavilion of Unesuki in Japan. The commission was for a meditation pavilion in a pilgrimage road. And then, as I was telling this morning, again, the strategy here was very simple, was just to move the pavilion from the road, or from the path, into the void, you will see later, and in a way, just being able to take that piece of air, let's say, no? And just move from what is already being a specific cultural issue, which is, you know, the pilgrimage poetry in Japan. So I think was important just to move a step on the side, no? And suddenly, in a way, to jump in the void. And then the effort of the project is reestablish this equilibrium. No? Again, even from an action point of view, when you do that, the next step is to pull. No? It's like if some friends want to jump, then you give him the hand. No? And then, let's say, out of that action, I develop a bit this kind of almost a kind of a structure which is developed, you will see later, out of the continuation of the path into the void and back into the path. Here is the pilgrim path, and this is the crossing bridge, and who is taking the old foundations of a suspended bridge as a kind of material to work with. So in a way, also in this difficult condition, the only thing I did was to repeat the effort of that builder. No? So you see the path that I think is quite clear that it's better just to leave it and move, because even just you see, I like it very much, these things about how just the same walking implies cleaning and things like that. No? And suddenly this is the end of the promenade, at the very end of the path. And in a way, this is the labyrinth was created. It's very simple. It's just taking a path and twisting it around and trying to connect and trying to be able to find an equilibrium into the existing structure. And then, again, in this case, the symmetry is almost very easy, because the upper structure is just working to counterbalance the bending moments of the other one. You will see it a bit later. But you should imagine that this is, let's say, done almost out of repetition of the same. No? Then even you see that the perception of the building is nothing else, again, the repetition of the same. Almost, I like to think that there is a kind of invisibility in these things because of the photos and the way in which the things are ascended to the media. The image is so important. But I think what I'm surprised is that at the end, with the buildings, most the ones I'm showing you today, I think by the repetition of the same technique, you could say, which is the making it. At the same time, the structure repeats the same. At the same time, the structures counterbalance the same. The handrail does the same. And in a way, the building becomes invisible to the use. Almost is like a tool. No? Maybe it's not true, but I like to think in that way. So you see also, I mean, I was working with very low places to sit. First, to work out the idea of the path and again, the twisting, but also just to know this kind of sensibility about the floor that Japanese culture have. No, I think was, and that was very physical and very easy. Just bring in the middle of the void one of these careful floor surfaces, no, that in Japan are almost equivalent to a very civilized way of being in a place. No? And then you see how, in a way, the mixing with the vegetation, and this is probably another of the things which are completely present in the project, which is do an action and then almost do the contrary. So open something and then cover it. You will see that in the cemetery. I mean, open a door and then closing it. Or I mean, always, it's just moving in between, doing at the same time one thing and it's contrary. No? So in a way, the pavilion, which makes its effort to get around the given structure, it works related to the old foundations, and at the same time is being hidden by the existing trees, but at the same time in a way, it's been exhibited by this kind of duplicate of the floor that it raises above the head. So you will see it later, no? And probably this is the best drawing, or the one I like most. I bring a lot of drawings because I thought that could be, if we want to see how we raise from floor into a third dimension, this twist, I think the tools, for me, the overlapping material and the very precise drawings are really the tool, much more than a specific perception of the finished object. No? So then you see the way of reorganizing all the foundations according to the old foundations of the suspended bridge, and trying to find a kind of equilibrium in between these and these things. No? And so at the end, the final structural scheme was very simple, almost like a kind of cantilever pillar. But then, because of the place and perception at the end, what you get out of that is this kind of almost place to see the path, or I think much more than a meditation, a kind of physical sensation, which is just being exposed to the maximum long possible border. No? Again, I think this strategy of the maximum length and also being down, I think this is the view from the path in which that thing almost touches, and then you see the cantilever balcony there. No? And that is the only hint you see of the construction when you enter the path. No? And that a bit here, I like it, always this kind of pair. So this is the old construction, the new bridge that you doesn't see, and the new construction that in a way is liberating him of the presence of the bridge, and then making this connection with the specificity of the nature here. No? So I think probably that is quite important. And that becomes, this is this very single spot here. And really what has become is not as much a kind of gate into the path. Doesn't matter the project gets its technical solution out of that, but becomes a kind of symmetrical object in relation to the city. No? And I think gets this classical location of almost one of these martyrium churches or pilgrimage churches, which in a way gets independent in the middle of the nature. No? And I think this relation, it's very important. And for me, let's say, this is a thought that came at the very much end of the project. No? Which in a way, it's, I will say, maybe, no, it's my mistake, it's the slide, don't worry. Yeah, I've seen it before. So I think this is the plan probably I like most about the cemetery, which in a way was one of the final drawings, idealizing a bit just by representing the topographical quality and not the reality. Now this is a really awful industrial area, so I think again, most of the situations, at least I get, they are not ideal, are public clients with these difficulties of classical budget, etc. But in a way was trying to, I liked the drawing without explanation, let's say. I liked the drawing, and that was a bit the problem on my lecture today. That was for me very difficult to give a kind of a statement, because let's say in a way being inside of the work, the only thing you could say about your work is that it's the one you do, no? And I think the effort is about accepting it and making it interesting for you along the time. This is a project I started 10 years ago, and now we are still building the chapel. So in a way, even most of the work I've been doing later, in a way, you could say that has been to make this work actual to me. So allowing me to keep working on it and finding things, no? And probably this drawing is the one I like most, because it's just almost thinking that the cemetery is something forgotten there, no? And also by chance, I think, or maybe it's not by chance, as we will see at the end of the lecture, one of the, you could say, techniques or whatever, what you are asking to the materiality is to almost to behave like a body, to have this kind of way of entering the land almost like an individual body will do it, just by touching the nearest, the farthest again, the deepest, the highest, the rocky, the trees. So in a way, almost establishing all these kind of, you could say, marks before any form of the building appears. No? And so that was the competition that I think was very formal and was very much related to almost a metaphor. I mean, I hate to imagine that as as a Barrett Street or something like that. I think here it was lacking a lot of the material qualities, no? And then I think suddenly, just by accepting the same, this is the cemetery is down there, no? Just by accepting the nature of the site and how, but the nature, I mean the precise technique, how in a way it's a kind of, it's this earth which is being deep under the sea on antediluvian times, and in a way it's a very pressured, it's under pressure, so it's very soft, and in a way digging it's quite easy, and at the same time it's an earth who allows time in terms of layers to be placed on the top. No? So in a way, that was what was missing into the competition, was the, you could say, the celebration of the same digging. No? And probably here a specific technique was developed, which is just reshaping the slope of the hill, the slope of the hollow, just by using the reinforced earth system, which is just in a way trying to bring back to, I will say this, the same construction act was the one who criticized the previous project, and suddenly it makes its own reality, almost just by using the metal mesh. This is not a gravitatory wall, it's working by friction. You will see later, and then at the same time it gets all these kind of volumetric qualities, etc. But maybe this is the important thing to understand. This is just the metal inside, I mean, it's the metal inside of the earth, and the stones, it's just by cleaning. So in order to clean the surface, no? So, but in a way, it's that, no? That the same action, in this case, action make a coincidence with construction, that was the digging. No, but in the case of Takaoka, the action was much more individual, less collective, and was just about personally jumping into the void. No? And then, let's say, this probably was the cemetery that was almost built out of itself. No? Again, the reconstitution of the land after the excavation. No? This is the earth tombs, etc. Then probably you understand why that. No? Because in a way, like a certain kind of soft quality out of the metaphor of the street, out of the thing starts becoming real. No? And probably, for me, technology, and that probably is the most thing coming out of Catalan tradition, has to do with reality. I mean, it's and this is this very difficult equilibrium. It's this kind of being able to stress the maximum capacity of reality, being able not to simplify, being able to accept the complexity of reality, but I will almost make a kind of equation in between reality with its ups and downs and technology. No? But bueno, you see a bit here the plan. And that was let's say, the technical tool who made the cemetery possible. The kind of 3 different, 1, 2, and 3 cast iron, precast, and precast were 3 precast pieces repeated and in a way piling and building one after the other. No? In a way, it's just, you could say, the repetition of that unit over and over again. No? A bit for the functioning. This is the asphalt of the arrival. Here are some almond trees. Then, in a way, if it's the first time you go there, let's say, with the coffin, even the car goes into the chapel, and then the family follows it with this kind of flower and representation. And then, in a way, the family goes out this way and go down into the cemetery from here, and the car keeps following like that. No? And then, in a way, after the ceremony, everybody goes up into the specific place. And this is, in a way, what it was missing in the competition, that was almost an outside pair of the chapel. You see that this idea of repetition and pairs, it's always present in my project. So in a way, let's say, as this morning they were asking me about my mistakes, if I doesn't do mistakes, and I don't know, I do not go to the psychoanalyst, but I think in a way to avoid mistakes, you always, if you put 2 things, you never know which one you like most, no? And then you keep yourself on this kind of doubt in between this and this, no? And for me, what let's say, even from technical or specific requirements of that room was not achieved, in a way I could achieve it here. And the whole project is always full of this kind of internal connections, no? And that is the result a bit with the pass of time. This is the upper level, and how, in a way, again, the next step after the digging was the planting and the filling of the cut with poplar trees with very, very subtle leaves. So in a way, the section of the earth is going to be, in the first time, reconstituted, or I don't know how you say in English, by that, and the second by the same vegetation, who in a way is going almost to be molded into the cantilever cast pieces. No? So, because at the same time, you see the form is very sharp and very clear, but at the same time is getting this secret complexity and a smaller scale. No? This is the passing from one level to the other going out of the chapel. No? And I think probably this image is the one who represents better the project. It's just this, again, this twisting for something which is very long, almost it takes this kind of path and surface quality and suddenly it's being twisted into here, which is almost, I would say, probably the gate, which is the real gate, because from the physical point of view, you also go through the dead bodies. No? I mean, it's just a moment in which the same walls of the cemetery really becomes the death itself in its physical presence. No? And then you go through into the cut. No? But then again, you see, the effort is always the same. It's making that action and erasing it and making it disappear, etc. You see, the only form that in a way it's rising, it's the entry gates that you will see later. And that could be a kind of summary image of the thing. Now the trees have grown, and I think that's really very important. And this probably is, let's say, what's going to be the cemetery at the end, almost this kind of descending path in which all the things starts getting, but I would say it starts getting the consciousness of the same slope, because this is very much organized to collect rain and in a way to describe the raining quality of that river that is quite important in the middle of the valley. So in a way that I think the rain is very well organized in this project. But probably the best slide is this one, no? In which, and here it was, again, quite unconsciously the complete project. No? The fact that after the ceremony, after you are there, it's always this sense of going up. No? I think, and going up, and in a way, I think the physical effort of raising, which in a lot of projects I've been dealing with this kind of physical effort, and the physical effort of raising, I'm sure it's connected through some body emotion or so something, but that when you get there, almost taking breath, no, or thinking. I think that this is really very important on the knowledge about the dimensions of the project. And taking breath, I'm sure it's something that has kind of almost automatic. I'm not being very, let's say, very deep. I'm thinking just on physical automatic reactions. No? And this is a secret path which is parallel to this one, which is the common graveyard that in a way you are almost forbidden to go through. No? But you could go through. This is what really at the end, when the trees will grow, will represent the cemetery. This is it's a kind of movable doors that when they are down, they close the possible entry of the cars, and when they are up, you could move, and then people should always find its way. No, I think it's what you see that again. If the section is the project, the trees are, let's say, the second step. There is this kind of objects like this one or that one or even whatever that makes a kind of theatrical representation. And this one, I think, if you imagine it moving it and closing and opening and etc., I think is the one who is taking this space here, which is the entry of the path and the service building into the chapel. I think, yeah, it's this one. No? You see from here to there, and probably is for me one of the best labyrinths I did. I think the labyrinth has this kind of quality from extending arms, touching, and then suddenly, this I like it very much, raising and repeating that in a, let's say, in a kind of free dimension, no? where you have all this kind of ways of gravity and all the precise things. No, suddenly I like it, this kind of almost compass, no? that the section and this compass changed the project from being just a path into being a kind of place to stay. So it twisted, no? And I think that the details are a bit aiming the same. When the things meet each other, they never hide let's say, the complexity from where they are coming from, no? And in that sense, I like it. This is some slides I did recently. I like it very much because then it's how you keep, as I was telling you, which is in a way, the technique, which I think is very important, that you keep following the interest on your own work, no? And then I think just accepting the deformation of the place, no? And how, in a way, by just this panoramic wide lens, that you are able to create almost a new reality, similar to what we were talking yesterday, in which you could really start a new relation with that, even by the, overwhelming and almost a kind of joking quality of that piles of stones, but for instance, some things like this, let's say, I never imagined that place like that, but I like to start thinking on that, and using the same projects as a kind of experimentation through enlarging, through establishing what is their capacity to resist modifications, no? Which I think is one of the important tools in our projects, the capacity to, and then this strategy, I was quite surprised, because that lamp was done later, and in a way it makes probably a kind of nice dialogue with the building, and almost works as a kind of dwarf and giant, which is something that also I'm always interested in the projects, no? Then again, the gates, and probably that will help me thinking, and most of these things I did it just by trying to follow. Let's say I force myself to accept the cross, I follow myself to accept the number 3 or the Trinity and the working independence of 1 or 2, etc. But then suddenly you see that maybe that could be cut, and I like it in a way to keep producing this kind of material that could criticize the work, no? Could give this kind of probably farther, more precise, formal attitude, no? Because you see, when you do the things, at the end, you are very vague, and talking very elementally, I would say some of these tilting decisions or sections, as you will see in archery, more than that, is about just building, expressing your doubts. I mean, just building in a kind of intermediate way that you could afford to change opinion, let's say. And I think for that reason, the final form of the projects I always base on a kind of physical, quality, like dimension, length, etc. No, darkness or void, or one of these very physical actions related to the body, but suddenly, in a way, about the specific things, maybe could be in another way. So I'm not, and here is the chapel, which is, and I think the chapel again is almost a repetition of the project. You see there is always the circulation path, the similar way than in the project. Here the only thing that is covered, and here it happens the ceremony, but the only thing that was built during very long time was this kind of series of rooms, almost like in which each room is nothing else than almost the excavation of the land until it touches the possibility of a new room to grow. No? Almost, again, this kind of geometry that is very precise and develop its own static and let's say dimension qualities. This is absolutely defined by the capacity of the cantilever of the concrete or whatever. No? But I think the chapel, it was built exactly with this technology, and this poor scaffolding structure was there for more than 4 years. So then now I'm thinking to keep it. So because really I really like it, and if not all, because then the ceremony could not happen, we will keep a lot of them. You know? So I think, because I think in a way the chapel or the room was built in order to allow them a ceremony to happen, and I think this is one of the most beautiful ceremonies until the moment. So I like to leave a trace of that on the next step. No? And that is the entry of the service building, in which it's something using the same precast pieces than in the niches, and then letting the door almost to be half open always. No? The door is bigger than the frame, so then it never closes. But it closes, but it does not go in. No? And I think it's quite important, and this is probably the way of arriving to the detail, just almost by quoting, everybody knows Asplund, no? I mean, and everybody who has gone to the cemetery remembers the key, no? And I think I like it almost almost as a kind of personal quotation, and that is the opening, again, the bringing inside of the landscape, and this is the mortuary, etc. Again, not hiding, just thinking that here feelings are so strong and sentiments so let's say active that even allowing a kind of almost, not a transparent, but almost thinking that nothing else than a curtain is needed, no? And so, and the moment of entering, again, it happens, one of these labyrinthic qualities, by the turning of the door, by the sliding of the panel, by the same form of the room defined in the roof, no? And probably this is a working photo I've been taking, and I will not show it today, but out of that I've been doing collage and cutting and changing and in a way modifying all these projects. No? And probably, let's say, this almost automatically, this is archery, and this is one of the two buildings, and this is the one who is most a porch, and probably you see the same strategy, almost just knowing that just by this horizontal effort, horizontal effort is very much related to the sensibility about walking, about distance, about effort, no? I mean, it's less about eye and view, no? But in a way, just how the porch that could be public could become private without losing its quality, so in a way the whole construction was pushed inside by the carefully hidden retaining wall that we will discuss later, and from there, similar canopies were in a way sent outside. No? So in a way, this porch becomes again public here. No? But you see that almost you could follow or trace this project almost on the top of the service building of the cemetery. No? Is this one. And later we will see this changing by the use of the earth kind of a scale landscape into the much more public. Here was competition and here was training, and that was public entry, and this was kind of secret building. So in a way, both, again, they act as a pair. No? So what I was not doing here, I did it here. So I think all these kind of internal logics are, in the making, very, very important. And that, again, I think probably this is the best example in which the statement was done straightforward from the beginning, just to, again, reusing, retaining earth, but not by itself. One step more was about adding the weight necessary to cantilever a bit by this kind of, let's say, compression pillars, the cantilever of the porches. So in a way, that was being used now for weight, but at the same time, the earth was again used by friction, let's say. No? And again, that was almost the exhibition of the possibilities, and in public space probably allows you this kind of non-precise and a bit undetermined way of defining things. No? And so I think this explains quite well the project. No? The same thing when it becomes hard and becomes concrete and becomes precise and becomes a measurement, but at the same time in both, let's say, the energy or the decision to create the landscape, it worked the same. No? Here you see the thing working in a much more precise way, and here in a much more loose way. And that is the result, no? Which is this very, very long public promenade. Almost, that was a clear statement, and was thinking that in the future my construction should compromise this place as a public space. No? Also some games about not wanting that for me this is an important statement. I mean, I never explain these things, but today I thought in a private conversation could be nice to do it. For instance, one of the offers, or no, one of the presents the dimension give to you is the enjoyment of perspective, no? And then I thought that in a way the thing I don't want is this kind of repetition of the dimension. So as soon as you get into the entry, the thing gets chopped, and almost becomes almost like a dwarf and very small. So in a way, it's a complete different nature of that bit and that one. So each one becomes very precise, and I will say not precisely connected into a kind of desired overall effect, no? I think you probably is what in the model you could not realize, but in a way, if it's going to be a change in between this and this, probably it's better that the substance of these things are different and express its variations, no? And that probably was the clear statement about how the place in the future, doesn't matter what happens, will have this compromise about this kind of mixture in between a specific scale and landscape opposed to public object building, no? And this is the plan I want a bit to discuss carefully, because I think probably is one of the plans, again, because it was done very fast. And because of that, probably, and also this morning, somebody tell me, you are not an architect, you are a tailor, and I agree. completely. So probably if you have no clients, I will become a tailor, because I like it very much, the cutting and the putting things together and the quality of the pieces out of the complete suite, let's say, no? And here you see that in a way each action could be independent, and working for public space and public clients, I'm always very conscious that the building could be stopped at any moment and could be like that for 10 years or 20 or forever. No, and I think what you should understand under these plans is this desire that, let's say, again, the foundations or the remainings will be maybe enough. Let's say you imagine that the retaining wall could be built, and I think, in a way, the project will not lose much. I mean, I don't care. Or if they put just these roofs, for me, it's okay. Or if that becomes an outside fence, it's okay, etc., etc., etc. So I think I should not tell that to the clients, but I think this sense is very important. So then what it means, that precisely the solution should be very precise, because what you are finding is this kind of moments in which let's say, the overlapping of the complete complexity of the thing should not ruin its quality of the fragment, which I think for me is quite important. And now maybe I'm working a different line, but at this moment I was thinking on this quality of non-complete as the best way to enter into the reality of our suburbs and our cities, no? And at least in the very specific conditions I've been working. And so let's say finally you see that the cantilever of the porch here is being almost forced to do the same game out of the cantilever, out of the retaining walls, cantilevering the same way. So here inside is a porch of the same quality of that, and again the twist is being made, and that twist makes almost these pillars being these kind of dancing figures that almost they take the same position of the people using the building. No? And this is the gym, this is entry corridor, this is a meeting room for small speeches, this is the bar, but at the same time the pillars should take the compromise to get the same position precisely as somebody that will be in the room, if the room is built, no? So it was the changing from that heavy construction into let's say, from this heavy and that was able to be modified in a way into these very light elements, who in a way are holding specific parts of the building, no? You see better here. That is precisely the entry, which we put this kind of very old tree with some of that pillars and just taking the dimensions and positions of just people. It's a kind of almost, again, the repetition of the way in which the building is made by the way the building is being used through action, let's say. No? And then this is, but then from landscape this is hidden and in a way again negated, no? And probably that is the distance in which I work, no? Let's say, in which I have established all that conditions, and the effort is just making them fit precisely, and their dimensions probably is the most important clue, and related, very pragmatic to technology. For me, dimension and material probably will be, again, the dimension plus the sense of reality will establish dimension that I wanted, let's say, and the sense of reality will establish this kind of technological precise decision. No, but probably, again, this is one of the labyrinths I like you to show today. No, because in here, what it happens is that it's established not only let's say, even the relation between the roof and the plan is not established, because we should find which is how this piece gets connected. And that piece probably is the most difficult, and probably is the only thing I was not able to think from the cemetery. Let's say until now, we're a bit more precise, but we've been following the cemetery project. But then suddenly, these conditions are put in a way that the material you are using doesn't give to you the solution, but on the contrary, it puts a problem. No? And I think, let's say, even if you consider that, again, the roof, as Kenneth was making a distinction, and the earth was making a distinction, the walls are related to the earth, etc. I'm not able to make that until I found it, that I think it's very important that this kind of overlappings in between roof and both roofs, it's the thing that brings light into the building and in the same way that the light enters into a porch, and at the same time is where the water is collected and thrown in out, and let's say light plus the water plus the carefully, almost blind following of this thing, like connecting, just taking points and building that, is what really built what is, I think, the real construction. No? Let's say at the end, the thing that becomes very logical in the way of using, etc., I think becomes one of these probably very precise spatial labyrinths, we could say, that I've been doing. Really a construction who makes its effort of connecting in all its points. No? And it's the structure which at the same time is letting light inside of the, you see, this is the inside. Letting light inside of the building with this kind of outside bright qualities. No? I mean, you are under a porch. But at the end, this kind of thing falls and becomes secret, and probably here is the origin of some of the things for the Unasuki Pavilion. No? Becomes secret and hidden. No? And I think at the end even it's able to express itself on this kind of gorge, or how the water, I mean, all this kind of, you could say, probably is the project in which that bit was much more necessary, becomes almost like a hidden blind window which is expressed in its form only. No? And then coming from that as a hidden building, this is its opposite, so it's above the earth. What happens inside here happens on the surface, etc. It's most a retaining wall system with precast until it becomes a ramp and an outside hall here for getting together the visitors, opening them in different groups, and then again they meet together for the from here or from there, waiting the shooting. No? And in a way, it's just the repetition of the possibilities of that precast piece under different program situations, which is that. No? I mean, almost again a blind construction who finds its position in the place. So sometimes this is the dimensions and the possibilities of that becoming a kind of bar and a porch you will see later. No? But probably in a way, it's again one of these theatrical representations that the building scenifies its difficulty to find its place, because I think this difficulty is very much part, if you see the surroundings, this is one of these difficult immigration patterns of the periphery of the city with no street, logical system, etc. So I think that the building here should not be a kind of building, should be something that should be very polite at the same time, scenify its kind of politeness in a way to entering the place. No? And I think this kind of twisting and moving, almost like a car, or like a car parking, or a kind of bus, no, or something, I think it got its let's say, real form to be there. No? I think, but then in a way that was, again, negated and contradicted by this kind of sharp system of really defining what is this kind of dichotomy, which again, it's always, my relations always functions by pairs, no? By pairs who came jumping one to the other. No? This is the interior space, and here is the only moment in which you, from the interior, you see that canopy above. No? That in the moment in which that becomes itself almost a canopy, gets this kind of folding quality, it starts happening what is really the entry, which is just, you see here, which is just the starting of the long canopy, which is, you see it better here. No? And it's the moment in which both meet, where the ramp gets into the floor. No? And it's that tool, almost again, in these projects, probably that is the equivalent to this kind of metal gorge window I've been showing you in the previous project. This was something that deals, instead of the complexity of the form, with the complexity of the light, and how in a way just was almost a machine to draw light. I mean, that is quite easy. Instead of putting letterings, or yesterday I think was very impressive to see the layerings of very precise, powerful project. But I think this is something, just letting the material to do something similar. No? Just the sun moving in this point makes it a very precise gate. No? And then you see putting together the things very, very near. That roof, the earth, the new path, no? Becomes one of these, becomes the answer to this kind of, let's say, place. No? The answer is being given by, it's difficult to see here, but by all this kind of twisting of the earth, no? That we will see later, I think, and that, bueno, let's see, it doesn't matter. Okay, here it's better, no? You see that, could you focus? Okay, perfect, no, because it's important not to be confused. So I think you see here the earth, the asphalt, the concrete, the earth, the same hollows, how it finds its coherence. So in a way was trying to make all of that a kind of unit, no? That was able to be described on the surface. And again, I wanted to do a pair in between the structural plan you have seen before and this one, because here the structural situation is much more simple because you are just working with earth and textures, but the effort was exactly the same, trying to redefine precisely the conditions for a moment to stop, no? I think the moment to stop is usually when also you raise your head and you have all this body connection with the complete building, no? And I think almost you see the overwhelming repetition of the same in between the street, the cars, the light, whatever, no? I mean, it's an effort to change in a precise moment what is the complexity of the city into almost this kind of unexpected gate, no? I think that probably is the slide who explains this better. Not before you, let's say, coming from the city on your shoulders, you just move into that terrain again. The slopes helps to connect. At the same time, has to do with body effort, and then etc. And then you move or down very fast from here, or very slow from there. No? But then suddenly, that is the first shot I showed to you with the light entering the canopy. No? And I think this surface and that twisting, it's probably, I think, very consciously developed on this project, which is a school plus a small housing for the children in a very difficult situation in an historical landscape in Morella, which is a very beautiful town. And the mountain was given a kind of almost northwest slope, which was very bad. And I think, again, this effort to get out of the topography in a way. Maybe everybody will be interested in how this building is being integrated, but it's not true. I mean, the main effort of this building is being out of the repetition of the topography, being out and try to find another kind of relation. No? And you see how the building, let's say, almost by twisting, gets this kind of exterior courtyard, the place for the housings, the ramp of connection, the entry auditorium, and the places for library, kitchen, etc., etc. So in a way, in a classical way, services, which are here and there, protects the classrooms, and that faces the courtyard. No? So it's a classical, but I think that the main interest of the effort was a bit this one. No? It's just to put the building in contact with a larger topography, which never the topography is the thing you find it at your foot. I mean, it's this kind of distance, and then you see the building getting I think the continuity of the larger valley, no? Almost escaping from the slope and going again. It's almost done with a complete different technique, but something similar to Nasuki. No? The building moves from its place into somewhere else, in that case again, to catch better light conditions and better position. No? And you see it here. No? In a way, the effort of the building is just escaping from the mimetic topography of that place into what is almost the end of a deeper valley. No? I will say that very, very elemental, because that helps to guide, in a way, your decisions, no? And define, for instance, the housing much more near of the town, and the housing. I think all this project is nothing else than the reelaboration of the housing pattern, which is done very direct and I think quite successfully, because it's a zigzag system which has no corridors, and it has all these kind of small courtyards, almost on this kind of classical British school housing tradition. And then this is nothing else than the effort of bringing that project into the landscape. No? Again, probably you see it better here. Almost the whole building is dimensioned by the dimensions of these rooms. And again, all these kind of things that later become very abstract. At the beginning, they were very soft and very almost a mimetic repetition of what it was there. No? But then the building jumps. And I think the same construction offers you a much more complex and better explanation. You see here, not at the end the result has no any mimetic, I think, relation with the landscape, maybe just the care with the scale, and it gets almost, I think, by satisfying specific needs, this kind of breaking quality. No? But I mean, this has been a surprise. It never was precisely as a target of the project. But because the main effort was that, I mean, this unit, that is a complex housing unit, should be able to do the same twist. Again, it's being thought as a promenade, as a kind of path, whatever. But again, here the labyrinthic twist makes that bit connect with what is the build structure of the village on the foot of the castle. No? And then just. I'm showing the plans because I think this material in my work is very important. It's what in a way supports the necessity finally of the abstract expression and construction. This is the playground for the children, and you see this quite careful effort to work almost like a tapestry system, no? In which the things gets connected and move in a way. Later it's being almost is exhibited as this kind of abstract cross, no? Which is the terrace, the other terrace, the ramp, etc. No? But at the same time, I think it's trying to have this kind of quality in itself, which is able to divide the window in two and to catch soft light and direct light and all these kind of classical games, no? But I think, let's say, the real labyrinth or the plan I like it to show you today will be this one. No? It's just these very simple units that you cross very, very direct, having room for 4 children, a small courtyard and a small outside working place, having the services hidden, and in a way this rhythm, which again, it represents almost one of these paths getting a stop, or one of these stopping movements, is the thing that gives the scale and in a way protects the building into this overwhelming landscape. No? You see, in a way, the result of that labyrinth was this window, which is the window who allows, in a way, the building to change the scale. And starting, this is a series of sections which I like to show to you, because in a way that is the window and the continuity of the ramp, and you get there starting from it's exactly the same building being cutted, and so it starts from this kind of double height scale into the continuity of the steps, into the internal connection in between working places and living, and an outside window, and then it starts getting the earth inside of the building, dividing services and classrooms. Then the thing gets more connected here and becomes the starting of the public connection in between outside and inside with the library. And again, and that is very clear, etc., until the building just gets framed and protected again. No? It's almost letting you that this kind of labyrinthic qualities, the sections were taken just one from here, one just from inside there, the other one from the courtyard, the other one from the ramp, the other one from here. So at every moment, the building, this twisting quality gives and constructs really the complexity of the space. No? And I think then the result of that is that. It's almost something that, again, I wouldn't say, I was more conscious of the ingredients than the final result. The ingredients was about letting light be into the building be almost a kind of sun testimony. No, this is the corridor of the children on the west moment, which is very normal. I mean, it's not, now taking the slide seems something special, but it's not. I mean, it's just, and then finally, let's say the conglomerate of that is what makes the building. No? It makes the building with this, and I will say, my hope is that still the physical quality of the place is more important. These pines were planted in the 40s, and I think are very important. Without that pines, probably the project were different, because these pines helps this kind of, again, this kind of pair dialogue. No? I think they are very, very important. And you see there, no? Almost the building is just trying to make the end of that. No? I mean, the end of this kind of, could you focus? The end of this kind of forest. No? I mean, I think, again, this is one of the fingers trying to touch more than to replicate an image. No? And that, very fast, is going back from surfaces. I think this was the competition model for the Huesca project, and that was the main scope of the project. Again, peripheral situation, under a mountain, no infrastructure, etc., etc., etc. The main idea of the project was just to make an equivalent of the interior ring outside as a public space, and then in a way use the digging of that to give the scale of the project, giving the scale of the project into this kind of very low porch system, and modifying the land out of the digging to be able to create the outdoor space. No? So it's almost a mathematical equation, no? in which the effort of the construction should be made transparent and should happen something in the public space. And the problem put here again was one of, again, the same. How you enter or how you move, or what is the result of this almost absence of space. No? I mean, I like the things to be as low as possible. I mean, it's one of the maybe games I like to do with myself. And this is the final solution. This is the very sharp and dark porch that in a way protects and throws the water and makes almost this kind of theatrical representation. Again, it's a similar situation than in Morella, which is that. This is how the porch gets almost as low as possible, and how the porch gets duplicated in the interior by the last seats as a kind of ring porch, and from there, 7 meters below starts the playground. No? But I think, in a way, this a very important piece, no? Who makes, again, this kind of sensible fingers outside of the building, which these kind of things are always very much represented by the shadows, in a way that the sun makes one of these scannings that in a way projects the construction into the limits, no? And because the project is interested on that, in a way the scanning made by the movement of the sun will offer almost an X-ray of that, no? I mean, you see, well, this is a bit the solution of the porch following the main directions of the beams, supported on independent pillars, no? And then is the moment of entering from that into the concrete porch, who in a way makes the ring and makes the let's say, the arena, no? Which again is a quite conventional building just around some sport hall. The only place which is carefully, specifically different is this one, because this is the construction who in a way should connect the interior private, let's say, and the exterior public, no? And we will go on that. Which in a way is how this kind of ring, which is the entry level, it's being able to make public outside. No? And here you see the main structural elements. No? And in a way, but let's say the building again was done just by this moment, no? When the excavation was done on the foot of the hill, and then out of that was clearly understandable that the lowest the building was, it was better, etc., etc. And in a way, the building should, in a way, be able to make a kind of comment to the complexity and the proximity of the forest, no? In terms of scale, quality, etc. But I like this document very much, no? Because we express what the building was. I mean, this is the foundation plan, the fields, the services, this kind of room, which I think is very important because it's a hidden room for training and also for being used as a kind of theatrical place for the outside. But then you see how, in a way, was the reestablishing of that complex perimeter that was the echo of that classical ring, no? And I think that was the hidden room, which I think that the pillars becomes giant and in a way express all this kind of dimension that the building is always forced to keep secret, no? I think it probably is one of the, for me, one of the best surprises of the building, no? Because this is just happens. I mean, again, the sections will change, but this is space very much hidden under the seats, no? Which in a way, just in one moment, allows this distance in between the building and the city, and all the air conditioning machines, all this kind of mechanism of the buildings are put outside just to take a kind of clear position of the land. But I think this distance was probably what the building was about, no? This, let's say, the ring produced that enormous void and create that distance, no? And now we will see, I think, one of these beats, I think. Yeah, yes, which is the moment in which the concrete pillars, probably you don't see nothing, but have faith, is the moment in which the building, the porches, they become the concrete structure, which I think, again, for me, this is the labyrinth of this project, the moment in which the concrete structure being flat, in a way moves into 3 dimensions, and by its quality, it's able to support the weight of the structure. This is an enormous pillar, using its weight also to cantilever and make these kind of entry rooms, no, that I think you see a bit here. It's the moment the building jumps height, it's the moment the structure folds in itself, lets the windows light the interior of the building, and at the same time builds this kind of public corridors inside of the building that you could move when the building is closed and nobody's playing. You could go from the upper level into the playground for children's down. I think that steps who becomes almost again a public open path, hidden. I think is the moment in which the building gets its labyrinthic quality. No? I think it's the moment that you get approach to it's just this moment here, no? The moment that this outside retaining wall, it's protecting the outdoor space and at the same time building the complexity of the arrival to the pavilion. And that is the outside retaining wall, which in a way is making the outside possible. And I like it, the handrail almost being sent as a kind of message, no? More than a message, as a messenger into the city. No? Let's say we've been describing what you see inside of the shadow there, no? But in a way that is being sent through the handrail. And then that handrail at the same time is the place in which you could look if some activity or some performance happens outside. No? I mean, again, for me, until the moment, the most important performance have happened here is construction, and also we left some of the useless pillars now there as a kind of, in a way, I think, testimony of that performance. No? And again, I think that the theatrical quality probably is what I was aiming. The building should connect to the public through this kind of representation, almost who is able to follow this. No? And then, very fast, we should follow from this to Alicante, because I just want you to show the entry. I think this is another big sport hall built for kind of, that is for World Championship of rhythmic gymnastics. So here I wanted much more a kind of balconry system, and the acoustics also were quite important. You know, it's this kind of in between dancing and gymnastics. Could you focus, please? And I think, let's say, that was the real commission, let's say, was the building that should be this, but at the same time should be in a school, so it means a building which is going to be used daily, and a school for gymnastics. So in a way I wanted not that this big room for 5,000 people should not be overwhelming. You should never have this kind of empty building, no? And then I was really trying to avoid any rhetoric about that, and then the project was just developed in this way: training, school, public access from outside along this very, very long promenade. Never exists a kind of interior hall. The moment people enter the building, enter almost out of a window, let's say, they run into parallel to the training, and then get, again, one of these labyrinthic qualities here, and get divided in different movements. But you will see that the moment the building touches the earth, in a way the effort is being made to make that, let's say, topographical contour the deepest possible. Again, it's one of these under this kind of important and big construction. It's almost, you see that the construction of the beams, they follow, this doesn't follow let's say, not only celebrates the dimension of the big room, but tries to follow the complete dimension of the building, and follows this direction of the public space, which in a way, it's that part here. No? We will see later. This is just for you a bit to understand. We are going to describe more that bit, but again, you should situate yourself on the very ordered plan with the beam you have seen, with the double arch, and then here again, competition, training, school, and training. No? Very simple. That is the back part of the building, which is shown quite conventional as a kind of a sport facility building. You see that both parts doesn't become symmetrical. And then as soon as possible, the building loses its height for the training where is no necessary high ceiling for apparatus. The thing again almost becomes condensed and packed and as small as possible. Because in a way what I really wanted is to stress the big dimension of the building. This is the thing we have seen, and also to show you very elemental the decision about that. Here dimension is the most important thing, and the fact that it has a kind of end quality of the topography of the hill, and at the same time a kind of balcony situation. No? So it's quite, but the plan I like to show today is this. It's much more like if the building doesn't exist, it's a kind of hidden void, it's a kind of bit of air which is being taken out, and then suddenly you are just kept with a kind of topographical, you could say, unknown perimeter, which in a way is making this enormous effort of economy, pushing and pressing the interior space, no? And let, you could say, the representation of the access of the building almost again as a kind of theatrical quality on the street. No? The street, which is a given perimeter with no specific qualities. And then again, no? Here we came to the tailor. No? I think again the scissors help very much to take that bit of reality which is being left by the building and by the city in a way. I'm very comfortable in these situations that nobody like it. I mean, these kind of bits of something. No? Probably the main effort is try to find meaning to this kind of bits which are forgotten and out of any ideal quality. No? And you see the topographical situation in which any of these, it's almost a similar effort to the archery building, the metal window, but here done in the floor. So any of these points should find a dialogue and a kind of pair there, and an equilibrium should be made. No? That is under the main beam, you see here, and here it acts this kind of access system. No? And probably in here I'm not going to show you the building, just because I think what is important is not seeing the building in that case. It's just letting the building work again. No? It's almost because in a way all the effort was to conquer or to in a way to make public that I will say privatize, no? But in the sense of public, privatize in the sense of public that piece of a street. No? And then again, it's a place where the representation happens and where the things get mixed. No? Because in order that to happen, let's say the interior of the building is quite naked, and all the elements, they came outside. No? I mean, the system of the ramps, the pillars coming from the upper entry system. But again, probably that sense of length or dimension. No? I mean, I think you see the building finding a place to exhaust itself. Not I like it this, not to get put its finger and touch and almost like the pilgrims need to touch things. No? It's almost similar, this kind of tactile quality in the buildings in between themselves. No? And here is much more a conventional view in which you are under the access ramps. This is the system of ticket offices, and this is precisely the gate. This is the ticket office. Back of there is the entry for the outlets. This is security, and in a way the public takes this road out, in, up, and there, no? And always under this situation. No? And again, it's just by density, by overlapping, by making the thing darker. I believe much more on these actions than on, which are done precisely through geometry, than into the precise form of the thing. No? And again, you see the effort of the road to attach and make the building comfortable. No? And these things were added very much at the end. It was a neck effort to push and compress and try to work with a group of people entering almost as a kind of thing that is being able to. This is not form in itself. It's the form that the group of people will take entering. And I mean, this kind of, again, the building touching you. No? I mean, very polite by touching you. No? I think it's almost quite important. And then the folding very near one of the main pillars, the information panel and the gate itself. No? Something the same at night, and it's quite similar. And if I show a lot of slides, it's because the lecture today was about this, about stopping in certain points in which that movement of leaving the earth happens, no? And that is the moment entering inside and going then, out of rhetoric, very straightforward, just direct into the main hall, no? Only the people who are really keen and interested, they could take a look to the athletes. In a way, you go through training, but you doesn't see it. Just really people who are keen, no? The same girls who are interested on becoming athletes or things like that, no? In a way, this is the piece, no? This is the labyrinth. It's almost this kind of three system of ramps getting into the middle and then jumping inside, each one developed with its own technology in terms of concrete or metal or whatever, but it's almost this, no? Almost running from the entry into the building, no? And that is the moment that gets, again, connected with the structure of the building in which a small scale happens again, and this is the vertical system of connections, no? And then from there, a window offers you, in a way, a kind of remembrance of that promenade, no? Again, you will see something similar to Nasuki. And here, the pillars are forced to make itself the effort of entering the room, no? I like it. I mean, in another lecture, will be different, talking about more these things, but really the effort of entering the room and being able to cope with the effort of this kind of living together with the sport performance, and I think finally help us to find a very precise solution in regards to seismic and bending problems. That I think it's a very nice chapter up there, no? This is the view from the connection, and in a way, but again, that is the bit, no? And here is the system of ramps we've been thinking, and I like you to show that to end, because in a way, suddenly your projects allow you to find things. I'm not saying that I have any connection with this, but I was really impressed how all the effort I've been trying to connect and to extend the building and to find its position, and out of any ideal situation, just by the dimensions of the site and by these classical, normal, difficult situations, I was really impressed how, in a way, in the bullfighting series, Picasso was such a good able to describe this situation, no? I mean, how both different topographies find the maximum surface of contact to get an equilibrium, how even the horns, at the same time dangerous, at the same time offer him almost a seat, no? And how the arm is balancing I mean, absolutely amazing, no? How, in a way, always on the Minotaur series, all this almost exhausting the capacity of the body to find contact, no? To really touch. It's really impressive. I mean, I could go very long with this, and I will not. But if you see the line of contact in between this instant, no? That these kind of things also in bullfighting just happen one moment, no? It's just the moment in which that equilibrium is needed, no? And probably I was really impressed that the necessity of let's say, throwing the arms, throwing these kind of elements that we always think that it had to do with the building to connect, no? That suddenly what could be very passive understood as a kind of path or whatever, suddenly becomes almost like a body necessity of the building itself, no? Touching to fix, to find an equilibrium, no? And I think where I found this in a much more overwhelming manner is on the precise knowledge of Michelangelo working in that. I mean, how the representation of the dead body by an active finger, or just, I think, much more how we do it as a builders, as a kind of death structure which has load, no? And even found the almost the random moment of a piece of rope, of a piece of cloth to stop, no? And I'm really impressed about this, no? You see. And also, suddenly I discovered that one of the things that was interesting in the Alicante project was a project that, because having no door, was offering this kind of sight, this very long exposure of the building outside to offer almost this kind of necessity of connection, no? And probably this could be the summary, just show you that this was not unconscious in Michelangelo at all. No? You see how they tries and how beautiful the pain of that is being explained by this hand, which is almost breaking under the weight and of this heavy heavy course, no? I mean, and at the same time it comes back. What I think is for me one of the most interesting places of studying technology, most in structure, which is friction, no? Which is how surfaces, they touch completely, no? Almost, and they allow to stop the movement. No? If you imagine how well thought is this drawing in terms of relation between weight and friction, that probably are the two more precise tools we have in order to build, no? And then how that was not unconscious at all. And in the more abstract pietas, they are almost about friction, about this complete touching from, say, the body of the building and the body of the city. No? And I think I was trying to do some of that, at least on almost trying to do it on the floor of this building, and at the end led with the pillars to touch the roof, that in a way at least will not contradict that. No? And I think, not to finish with that, this is things which I'm much more doing now, that in a way this kind of try to find the substance of these connections. This is the preparatory material for an office, for selling cars, and one of these electric cars, and I was trying to convince the client that the image of the car is very much on the reflection and how the city, in a way, it's welcoming the car and connecting, and we lose the client. So it's, but I think it was a good try. I mean, trying to convince him how the building and the car could be completely dissolved in the city. You know? And maybe Jean Nouvel was explaining better yesterday some of these things. You know? Because in my case, I think probably could be going back, summarize again, or the answer I give to them was finally almost this kind of icon labyrinth in which the surfaces and the cars and the people, they mix almost in a kind of interior light quality. But again, probably I was using much more primitive techniques, no? In that sense, to finish, for me, I'm very always impressed by the Joseph Beuys' capacity to exhaust the ink and the paper to say what he wants to say. No? Thank you.
Architetto Enrico Miralles, thank you for sharing your ideas and creativity with us and showing us how you can and you are able to transform some very abstract sketches in a very beautiful architectural reality. Thank you very much.